recent party membership research project showed that as much as 77%, and that's up 7% in recent years, of party membership is from the upper and middle classes, and only 23% from the working classes. What can we do as a party to increase our membership amongst the working class groups?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to say that people inside political parties make up 1.5% of the country, and in many ways we are, for want of a more polite term, weirdos for being inside a political party. I think that's the first thing. I think secondly, I think historically the Labour Party there has been an imbalance, and you can check the figures, but I think there has been an imbalance in between the number of people who come from a working class background and kind of AB1, so to speak. And that has fluctuated, but definitely believe that over time. How do you begin to attract more working class people into the party? I don't think you do it by simply going for the lowest common denominator in terms of policy. I just come from a discussion actually where we were talking about social conservatism versus kind of liberal opinions and kind of liberal social liberals. And we each, in politics, you often say, well, I'm in this camp, or I'm in that camp, and that actually there are many working class people who are in the socially conservative camp, and therefore you in the kind of liberal opinions camp don't listen to them and dictate to them and tell them and patronise them, and actually their views are just as valid. I think, first of all, what you need to do is you need to be able to find a kind of common language and a position to be able to say, oh, actually, what is it we all want? And I think what most people want is security, and they want to know that economically they have a stake, they have some kind of say, some kind of ownership, some kind of identity, some kind of self-worth in the community and the environment that they live in. And I think if you can kind of find a language which allows both those two groups who want pretty much the same thing to begin talking to one another, I think that's critical, and that's something that politicians, members and people outside of politics alike are going to have to do if we're to bring together those what I would call those forces, those progressive forces, people who want to see a better world, a fairer world and a fairer society and economy. But there is this, and the example I would give is my white working class family on my mum's side. I'm quite clear that they were a product of the 1970s and 60s, and my granddad and nan and granddad, I know for a fact, would be considered, if they had those opinions in this day and age, as racist. And yet my dad came in a predominantly white factory, met my granddad, met my mother, and was accepted into the family. And I've often thought long and hard about this. What's changed between now, if he'd come over now and then? And I think it's about the fact that he came over to a community that was had confidence in itself. It had, they were in trade unions, they had council houses, in terms of their income, the jobs, there was a job market, full employment was part and parcel. When I say full employment, I'm not talking about gig economy, I'm talking about full employment with jobs which actually paid you enough to live, to work. You had council housing, you had public services. We were one of the more fair economies in Western Europe at the time, near where the Scandinavian countries, not quite there, but near there. And so my dad came into that, as did many people from where he came from, into an environment where people felt empowered, they felt safe, and they felt relatively secure. And I think what's changed now, what's changed now is that security, that economic empowerment, those voices, people feel that they don't have it. And I think that insecurity can lead people to basically look for scapegoats, feel less secure, and to feel less welcoming sometimes, as one example. So ultimately, I think what the manifesto has shown, what the manifesto in the last election has shown us is something that many people have been talking about, which is that ultimately, if you have a fairer society, social justice, social and economic justice, I think then you begin to develop an ability to have a language which both sides can understand. And also you have people are far more able to then look outwards with confidence into the world. And at the moment, I think there's a sense that people feel disempowered, people feel nervous, people feel insecure, and I think as a consequence, people begin to become far more inward looking, and that's unhealthy. So I think as politicians, as the Labour Party, how do we reverse that? And that comes down to good old social and economic policies, and I think it will come in time. If we can convince enough people that there is a way that we can achieve that, then I think it will have implications for how people perceive the world and their place in it.